Hello, my name is Brian Watkins and welcome to the video tutorial for Unit 4 in which we prepare a simple interest calculator. The purpose of Unit 4 is to teach you more about the use of functions in Excel. Functions are really where Excel becomes super powerful, and the most important function you can learn is the if function. The if function tests a cell, and you can include any condition you wish, and after it tests the cell it will do something, and if the cell doesn't meet the condition it'll do something else. You did this briefly in the pivot table examination when you tested the condition for the conditional field that you calculated. So what I've done here with this spreadsheet is I want to demonstrate something to you. A spreadsheet that looks blank may not be blank. What you're looking at here is a spreadsheet that contains a test cell. You can see that cell E2 is named test cell. If I were to change the value in test cell to true, then all those cells that just opened up with exclamation marks, those cells contained an if statement. All the same if statement, but here it is. And it says, test the condition test cell equals true. If test cell equals true, comma, put the text that's in those quotes into the cell, which is a bunch of exclamation marks. If it's not true, if test cell doesn't equal true, then put a blank. And a blank in Excel is represented by two double quote marks. You can see them right here. You also see that the if, this is the formula that you can see anytime you type if and an open parentheses. Logical test, comma, the value if it's true, and the value if it's false. And you can even put if statements inside if statements. So just take a look here at the power. If I change this to false, or if I change it to anything but true, then everything disappears. So we're going to teach you how to use that power to create a spreadsheet that only demonstrates the information that is relevant to the user. The spreadsheet will automatically blank itself anytime that there's no need to show information. The second function you need to learn is called the count function. The count function is essentially designed to tell you how many cells have data in them. So let me just do a count function here in the first box. I'm going to say count, and then I'm going to say cell F1, and it returns a 0. It returns a 0 because cell F1 has nothing in it. But if I change F1 to a numeric value, even if I put a 0 in F1, any number will change the counter. The count now goes to 1. And again, I could have a big large number, doesn't matter. All the count function does is to count whether there's a number in it. Now, if I want to count two cells, I can change my count function. I can say count cell F1, comma, F2. Well, there's still 1. But if I put a number in F2, remember 0 counts as well? Oh, sorry, that was in G. Let's put an F2. Now I have 2. And so the count function is counting this and this. If I wanted to, I can count any number of cells. I can change F2 to, what was that one? G1 that I did? G1 and G2. So now I have 4 cells I'm counting. And my cell is 2. If I put a 1 here, it should go to 3. And it does. And a 2 here should make it go to 4. That is the long way around counting cells. If I want to count lots of cells, then I have to go through and use a range. I'll now teach you how to do a range. Okay, I've switched to sheet number 2 so I can show you a range of cells. So let's just take, we'll take this column here and we'll fill it up 1, 2, and you remember how to do the autofill. So let's just put some numbers here. Let's just go to number 15. So now there's 15. If I want to count those, then what I do is I hit equals to let it know that a formula is coming. I type count, open paren, and then I would highlight them. And you see what the computer has done. The computer has realized that what I want is a range of cells. And so it's done F2 colon F16. That's the same as saying I want you to count every cell from F2 to F16. If I hit enter, it counts 15. Remember, if I take any one of these cells and I take the number out, my counter goes down by 1. And so now you go, that's really great, but how is it going to help us in our problem? You will see how that helps in the problem, because we're going to use the count function to establish when our if statement is true and when our if statement is false. So let's go back now. We'll create our simple interest calculator from scratch. Okay, by now you're realizing that I'm a bit of a stickler on the formatting, and I hope that you'll be patient with that, because there's a reason behind this. And the reason is that you could write an absolutely fantastic spreadsheet, but if it doesn't look the way that your employer or your customer is used to seeing it, they will discount it in their mind as not being quality product. So that's the reason why I've got all these formatting rules, and I expect you to follow them exactly. So we start with our title. We're going to call this a simple interest loan calculator. And you remember that we always do, prepared by, and your name, and then prepared on, and then today's date, and then we do a purpose. This calculator will prepare a table showing the interest payments to be made on a simple interest obligation of any amount and any rate over a user selected number of years. All right, and so now we want enter, and we're going to do, let's do 6 columns here. So we go, and I hope also by now you've reviewed the video about Excel in the Testing Center. You always should see a green tab up in the corner. That green tab tells you that you're in Office 2010. If you don't see the green tab, then you need to close, and you need to open Excel 2010. The Testing Center has the old and the new version, but you need to always be sure you're using the new version, which we've made sure are available to you. So we go home, and this will look a little different, but this is the wrap text, and the only reason you're not seeing the words wrap text is because the video recorder requires me to shrink the view. So we wrap the text, then the next one down is merge and center. We merge and center, and then we align it. So align it to the top, align it to the left. So now my spacing is perfect, and I just have to bring up my row. There we go. I'd hate for anybody to lose points on something so easy. We have our title section done. So let's go again. You're looking for that green tab. That's how you know you're safe. And let's save it. We're going to save this as accounting 232A. Let's call it simple interest calculator exam 4. And I'm going to save it as an Excel workbook. And there we go. And you should be in the habit of always saving your work before you do a lot of steps. And then if you accidentally lose it, you can go back to where you saved. So just remember that. I would hate people to lose all the work that they've done. So now we have the data section, just as we did before. Data section, bold, underline. Bold, underline, there we go. And let's bring it out to F. Let's give it a, how about a light blue, thick box border. Got a line above and beyond, that's good. Now let's do our data. We have a principal loan amount. We have an annual interest rate. We have a loan period of some number of years. And from there, we're going to want to show our user the total interest, the total principal. And we're going to use a check figure, which we'll discuss more later. But a check figure is a calculation designed to help your spreadsheet ensure that it's reconciling itself. Now, we're going to use the procedure to name the variables that I taught in an earlier version. And what we're going to do is we're going to name the variables immediately to the right of our text. So I go to Formulas, Define Name, and it comes up automatically, Principal Loan Amount. Okay, and I'm going to go through each of the variables, and I'm going to define the name. Total interest, total principal, and I left off one. So let's go here. If you've ever left one off, then what you do is you right-click, and you insert, and you put an entire row. There you go. Now I can say total loan payments. That's the one I forgot. And so I'll go here and I'll define the name, total loan payments. Now what I have is a series of cells starting with principal loan amount that are all named. But I don't want those to hold my data. So what I'm going to do is take it up, select the range, and do Control X. Control X cuts them. And I'm going to go over here to D and I'm going to paste them using Control V. Now, when I go up here, you can see that the names went with me. And so if I look at my name manager, I should see them all in the D column, except test cell, which looks like it came from that little thing I did earlier. When you see something in your name manager doesn't belong, delete it. Get it out. I see too many people on tests that made misspellings or they accidentally typed one twice. Before you finish, go into Name Manager and just clean it up. That way you won't have any trouble. Alright, so our principal loan amount, our annual interest rate, and our loan period in years is information that your user is going to provide. So let's make those blue background. And let's just, for purposes of the tutorial, say we're going to have a $200,000 loan, and we'll call it, how about 7.25%? So 0.725%, and we'll just do remember we have 30 years, so we'll just do it for 30 years. That's the maximum we'll probably do. And then we have our other totals that we're going to do calculations on later. We're going to center everything, and we're going to call that a currency and that a percent, but we want those two decimal places. Okay, now we're all formatted and ready to go. And it looks like I did it again. So let's we need to find our monthly payment for this loan, and let's put in a space here. Right click, and we'll just do an insert, entire row. I'm going to give you guys the names that you're going to use on the test, but I'm going from scratch here. So monthly payment, and we're going to calculate that, so we have to take out the fill. And let's talk about what monthly payment represents. This is a simple interest note, and so you're going to pay interest every month based on your principal. So let's just hit an equals to show. Let's take our principal loan amount. Now there's two ways we can do this, three ways actually. I could either go to Formulas, using Formula, and take principal loan amount. Okay, and now I'm going to multiply it times my annual interest rate. Well, I don't have to go up here to Formulas to get it. I could just go to the cell itself, click on it, and it would pull in annual interest rate. So there's more than one way to do this, or if I wanted to, I could type it, annual, and you see how it shows up there in a little cheat box, and I double click, there it is. So there's a number of ways to get these names into your spreadsheet. You don't just have to open up Name Manager, although it's good to have it in Name Manager. Now, this is a monthly payment, so our rate has to be divided by 12. And there's our monthly payment. We have to format it, so let's give it its format. And we'll do a currency again, and that looks good. Okay. This being a simple interest loan, it's relatively easy for us to calculate the total interest that we're going to pay over the term, because we know loan period in years. So we take our loan period in years and we multiply that times 12. And that, I'll correct it myself, that will tell us, I'm putting parentheses around this. Oh, I just changed the loan period. There we go. When it's in color, you know you've got it right. And the computer will also circle the variable for you to tell you that your formula is being calculated accurately. And so that's my loan period in years, and I've calculated my monthly payment times. I can either click on it here, or I can go to Name Manager. Oh, remember I added that, so it didn't name. So I have to start over, and we'll name monthly payment. And let's just do it the long way. Monthly payment. So let's double check in our Name Manager that we have everything here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're good. Okay, so let's do this again. The interest will be the total number of payments, which is loan period in years, times 12. And then I'm going to multiply those payments by the monthly payment, which I already calculated. There's my total interest that I'm going to pay over the life of this loan. And we can put a currency on that as well. Actually, let's just take these numbers here, and we'll use accounting for these so that they all line up. Make them a little easier to read. And total principal would be the principal loan amount. You know that the principal never changes in a simple interest obligation because the interest is never added back to the principal amount. So the principal can be paid off, but under our table we're just going to have the principal being paid off at the end of the loan. There we go. And let's put that on a comma. Let's change these. I'm doing a format as I go along, make it a little bit easier to read. So, okay, and our total loan payments will be simply the principal plus the total interest. Alright, let's put our format on that. Let's give it a top and double bottom border to kind of show that that's a total. How's that? Wonderful. Maybe because that's the bottom line, we could put a $ sign on that one. Does that look good? Yeah, we'll keep that. Alright, so there's our data section. Let's look through anything we can polish up here. Let's push that row up, and let's start our answer section. And the answer section is going to be, bold underline, where we use the logic that we talked about earlier with the count. Let's give this a, have it a green this time, and we'll put on a thick box border. Okay, and we're going to have a table that's capable of handling 30 years worth of loan information. Let's begin by doing our columns. We're going to have a month, interest, principal, and total payments. And while we're here, let's take and align them center, bold and underline. We're going to need to probably take that out a bit, shrink this a bit, just to keep it all balanced. Maybe a little more in the interest, a little more there, a little less. Okay, it looks all balanced. And what we're going to do now is we're going to draw out the formulas for our month. Now we're going to need a 0. We're going to need to prime this. because all counters need something to look back at. So we'll start with our 0, and then we are going to use the if statement in order to populate the lines of our table. And it's going to be a little complicated, but you've learned the functions, so let me show you how it's going to work. We're going to start the equals to show that a formula is coming. We're going to say if, but the test that we're going to use is going to be a function by itself. And we're going to use the count function. Count. And what we're going to use for our count, the box to count, is going to be a range. So we're going to start with this. This is going to be the top of our box. And we're going to count every time that box gets larger. We want the number to go up by 1. So for our first line, we're just going to count that box by itself. But here is the number one problem I see on this exam. Students forget that when you name a range, you have to use a colon. Okay, so that will create a box that starts at the left and ends on the right. If you have a comma there, it's only going to count 2 boxes. Remember, we want 360 months for a 30-year loan, so that box has to get pretty big. So use a colon there. And the other thing you need to do, let's just hit. We're gonna put on the edit function. F2 gets you to the edit. But this cell right here has to be figuratively pinned to the wall. It can never move. And you do that by creating an absolute reference. And we're not going to create a variable for that named count start or anything. We're just going to take and hit the F4 key, which turns it into an absolute reference. You could also type that, $B, $20. And what that does is that says, when I copy this cell, that B20 will always stay the same. The next one will change. But this one here, this first B20 with the $, will always be the same. So we're going to have a count. And we're going to say whatever the number in that box is, if it's greater than our number of payments, which is loan payments in year, or loan period in years times 12, that's our logical condition. If we come to a line that's greater than the number of monthly payments that we want to indicate on our table, then we want to make a blank, which is 2 double quotes. That's the true condition. So let me read this for you. If the count function is greater than the number of months, put a blank. If it's not, then you want to put a number. And the number you want to put is simply, let's see, B20 plus 1, which should take that 0 and add 1 to it. And then we'll hit enter. And there we go. There's a 1. And that's precisely what we want it to be. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to center those, and we're going to use our fill function. And what I've done is I've put the cursor in the lower right hand corner, and I'm just going to pull it down. And actually I should probably put another number in here. So let's do a copy and a paste. That gives me a 2. Now if I do 012, it should say 3. Oh, it's not. It's not because of the formula inside. So what we'll do then, we'll back up. Let's just finish cross, and we'll just have to copy it down using our row numbers. So our interest, we're not going to have anything in month 0, but in month 1, we're going to use our if statement again to decide if we want something to show up. And so what we're going to do is essentially just a simple if the month number, so we're going to test that cell directly to the left, is equal to a blank, then leave this cell blank. Otherwise, tell us what the interest is. And we've calculated already that it's going to be monthly payment. Okay, let's format it while we're at it. There we go. Now our principal is just a little bit different. The trick with principal is that you're not just testing to see if there's a month there, because we're going to have plenty of months where there's an interest payment but no principal. Instead, you need your cell to recognize whether it is in the last month of the loan. So we do that by checking if, and we're checking B21, if B21 equals loan period in years times 12, then you know that you're on the line where principal needs to show up. So then you would say if loan period times 12 equals B21, then you put in your principal loan amount. Otherwise, if you're on any other line in this table, stay blank. So practice reading that. Let's read it again. If B21, which is helpfully outlined in blue, is equal to loan period in years, which is 30 times 12, then put your principal loan amount. Otherwise, put a blank. So it left it blank, which you'd expect. And then finally, we want to add up our total payments. For total payments, first thing we ask is, do we have a month? Because if there's no number in cell B21, if B21 is blank, we want this to be blank. Otherwise, we want to take the prior payment, which would just be the cell above, and we want to add to it the sum of the interest and principal. And you'll see how the program has put a range in for me. And there's my if. So let's go and let's format it. Looks like it did it right. And you'll recall that when we tried to copy the months down, all of that formula in the cell defeated the autofill. So we're gonna take these formulas. We need at least 360. I need to handle at least a 30. But as you've realized, it just doesn't matter if you go farther. It's just going to take some more memory in the computer. So let's just drag down until we get to, let's see, 300, 400. Oh, there it is. I just copied down here to 444. And if I go up, perfect. Now I can see that at 360, it dropped in my principal. Now you can see that there's some formatting to do. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to hold the shift down, and then I'm going to hit the end and up arrow. And that's going to go right up to the top of the column. And how does it know where to stop? Remember, even though you don't see anything, there's a formula in all of these cells. And so I'm just going to tell it I want it to be aligned, center align, and I want it to be a comma format. So that should have done the trick. Good. Now we have a schedule that's capable of handling a 30-year loan. And you can see that all those interest payments get made every month, and then at the end of the 30 years, the principal gets paid, and there's your balance of payments. Now the value to any spreadsheet, and the reason why I penalize hard coding so greatly, is that I can now set a loan period of 1 year. And that's all I need to see. You don't have to use that group function we did last time. You don't have to do anything. It's all automatic. And you see exactly what you need to see for your sheet of 12 months of a simple interest loan. So now finally, let's talk about a couple other features that you'll be expected to learn and reproduce for your test on exam 4. What we want to do is we want a check figure in this cell here that goes and totals up all of the payments that are outlined in our table. So we want a sum function. And what we want to do is we want to start right up here in month 1. I'm holding the shift key down now. And I want to show from this all the way to the bottom, so end down. So that took us to the far bottom where the formulas are in the cells. And you'll recall that's the interest column. Let's move the arrow over 1. And now I have highlighted the entire interest and principal columns that could possibly contain numbers in our table. You should see the sum of D21 or C21, that's this corner, to D444, and that would be the lower corner. And that is a range of cells. That can be a It can be any number of columns or rows, and that's how Excel allows you to cover vast amounts of data with a short reference. So when I close that off, that sum should be equal to my total loan payments. So if I subtract total loan payments now, I should get a 0. Good. I have a 0. That means that my table is displaying the correct amount of interest and principal. If the table doesn't display the correct amounts of interest and principal, then we've got a problem. So let's do this. Let's conditionally format this cell. Conditional formatting is a quick way to have a visual cue provided to anybody who's using a spreadsheet. I can put any number of rules on any cell in a spreadsheet and then tell the spreadsheet to format things according to that rule. So if our check figure should turn out to be something other than 0, then let's give it a rule. The conditional formatting is found on your home ribbon, and it's right there in styles. And what we're going to do, click on that, and we're going to put a new rule in. And the rule we're going to put in is to format only cells that have a value. And this is going to be a tricky rule, but let me tell you why we're going to do it this way. You'll recall that when we calculate interest out for 30 years, those of you who have done exams 1 and 2 in this class, know that there's a tiny, tiny fraction, like a billionth of a cent, that will show up. So you'll have a number, but what we want to know is, did we have something that rises to the level of a penny? So let's say the cell value should not be between -1 cent and +1 cent. So if the cell value is not between that, or in other words, it's perfectly okay to have some negative 0.0001 or a positive 0.0001. That's perfectly fine. Actually, let's put an equals -0.01 and then an equals -0.01. We just want the cell to trigger, the format to trigger, if it's outside that range. If it gets as big as 1 cent, we want to know about it. And the format we're going to set for this is going to be, let's do a fill of red. That'll get your attention. And a font of yellow. Okay, that's what our cell will look like if for some reason there's more than a 1 penny error between our table and our total loan payments. How do we check that? Well, let's just force something. I'll put $500 in here, and what that will do is that will just kind of force our table to not match. And you can see how the cell in D15 popped up and said, you got a $500 error going on. And it looks like it's a positive error. There's 500 too much in payments. We'll clear that by copying the appropriate cell over it. So now we're back. But what if our logic down here in this cell, instead of pulling the principal loan amount, pulled the principal loan amount less $500? Okay, and I'm just creating a deliberate error in the formula to show you what would happen. So now we're 500 underpaid, and fortunately our check figure catches that. What if we were to be 0.005? That's half a cent. No problem. We're okay. You know, it's going to round up. Let's just do this. Let's say 0.004. There. Now it's 0, but it's not going to trigger our function because our function was looking for more than 1 cent in problems. So now you have a nifty way of changing your spreadsheet instantly to signal that there's a problem. But you will find, and it's important to document your spreadsheet so that any user or a person at your office or somebody who might come across the spreadsheet can understand what's happening. And check figure, to all of you, you understand what it means, but to your user has no idea. So I'm going to teach you now how to use the comment function. Go to the check figure box, do a right click, and insert comment. It's always going to show up in this row here, and you can do this on any cell in the spreadsheet. Click on it, okay, and so now it comes up, the CSR admin, that's my username, and we're going to say this cell will turn red in the event that there is an error in the formula such that the total payments in the answer section do not equal the total payments as calculated by the data section. Okay, that kind of explains what's going on. Let's bring that out so that we can see everything. And that'll cost you points on the test, by the way. If I don't see you adjust the box, if I see a box like this, you lose 2 points. So just make sure that every step you take in here is formatted appropriately. And there's your box. You could move the box around if you want, but I think it's placed just fine. Now when I click outside the cell, the box disappears. And there's a little red triangle in the corner of the box. That means that there is an issue. There's actually a comment that can be read in the cell. So if I click on even if I hover over the cell, it will tell me what that is all about. Now if I want to edit this, I right click on it again and I edit the comment. Okay, so let's just move the box out here a bit. See, and it preserves that arrow, and so now it doesn't cover the answer section, and the user wouldn't be confused by that. So there you have it. Let's click out. Now it's done. This is your simple interest loan calculator that you're ready to go. When I come along and grade this, I'm going to want to see first that it's capable of doing a 30-year loan. So you come down here. There it is. Make sure that the principal comes right in on that last month. The second thing I want to see is I'm going to go to your formulas rather. Look at your name manager. I'm going to make sure you're naming your variables and you're using your variable names. The third thing I do is I change the spreadsheet so that I can see the formulas, and I want to make sure that you are using the names appropriately. Okay, so I'll look to see if you're using cell references in inappropriate places. We have discussed everywhere where a cell reference is appropriate. Just keep doing it that way and you'll be fine. There are other logical ways you could come up with a count. That would be perfectly acceptable if you came up with any of those. Now this green is telling me that I have that negative 004. I've got a little bit of a problem there. The formula differs. That's the spreadsheet's way of reminding me that I made a little change. So let's just cover that up. Control copy, Control paste. And you'll recall that because I use relative addresses, meaning there's no dollar signs, every time I copy these formulas down, it will just adjust. It says B32, 33, 34, and it adjusts automatically. The important thing to learn about this is your count function. As it adjusts from row to row, what you've created is an automatic counter. When it counts everything that's in the B20 to B20 range, if I highlight it, it'll show me what the range is. There's one box that has a number in it, so the number is 1. If I come down here to the end, or let's just go down here to cell 100, cell 100. If I click on it, now you can see my count box. That blue box has expanded. Okay, it now has the full 99 in it. So that's the important thing to know for this test, is how to use that if-then logic. In fact, I found that I could even enter 0.5 and it'll give me 6 months. That's an elegant little way to make sure that you're not getting too much data and overwhelming a user. Okay, let's look it over. I did notice that I did not place my appropriate file path footer, so we'll go to Print Titles, Header Footer. We want a footer here, and it gives me all kinds of choices. Now I'll put a custom footer, and I just want a file path. I'll just stick it over to the right. So now I have a file path footer. And OK. I don't care where you put it as long as there's a footer with the file path. And I go to the file and I go to print, and it'll tell me exactly what my output looks like. So there's my output. Looks good. Spaced well on the page. If you want to make any changes, this is the time to do it, but I think it looks good. Go back home. Always make sure that you run a spell check, so let's do that real quick. We go to Review, Spelling. Yes. Okay, it looks like I passed my spell check. I'm going to save it as Excel workbook. I've got my name saved. Replace it. I'm done. That is a perfect score on the exam, even if someone else was grading it. So I hope that you will study this, learn those functions, understand how to recreate them, understand again that the big problem students have is if this colon between the B20s is a comma, your count function is never going to be greater than 2 because it'll count 1 cell and 2 cells instead of a wide range of cells. And you always have to make sure that this B20 is an absolute reference with the $sign, get off of that, so that your count box expands each time instead of counting down the way it would. So just remember those little things so that when you get in the testing center and something goes wrong, you'll know exactly where to look. So aloha, good luck with this, and if you have any trouble, please email me at my office, and I'm happy to work with you.